City later this week for an event, and we are so excited to welcome you here. Can you tell me a little bit about that event and the intention of it?
I think the intention of that event is to talk to people about how to engage with survivors and to not shut them down, to give them voice, to make sure they feel heard, protected, and not pressured to tell their story or to divulge more than they're ready to. Sometimes people use words, they have looks, expressions, demeanors that immediately shut down a victim. And it's really important that victims feel that they're in a safe space with a person who cares about them and who is not going to shame and blame them. So that's a discussion we're going to have. I know that everybody has seen me in the Nassar case, but that wasn't my first victim case. That wasn't my first multiple victim case. I've heard much worse cases. I've not heard cases with that many victims, but I was a military judge for 20 years. I've been sitting on this bench now for 20 years. I have literally heard thousands of victims, and I do know that when they speak, they begin to heal. I also know that when their family members tell them, you matter, you're clean, you're whole, whatever it is they say to them, it doesn't always equate to them believing it. But that's the power of the robe. And I can use the power of the robe for healing, and I can use it for contempt. And I can use it a lot of different ways, but I think the most valuable way to use it is to say to victims that they're whole and they matter, and that they didn't do anything to cause whatever happened to them. And so I've always tried to use that power of the robe, the magic of the robe, to be an inspiration and to help in their healing journey. And I think that's part of I think that's part of what we should be doing as judges. I know not everybody agrees with me, and then they don't care.
For those of us who, we don't have the magic of the robe, or we aren't in these positions of authority. Earlier you were saying that there are some ways that we aren't supporting victims or making them feel not safe when they are sharing their stories. How can we support them in the best way possible?
So open-ended questions is really good. I tend to not use the why question, because why shames and blames. I think why should be retired to science, because when you ask a victim, especially, why were you there? Why were you out so late? Why didn't you get a different drink? Why were you dating him? Whatever it is, that why question tends to shame, tends to blame, and it shuts people down. I think open-ended questions, things, if you want to be supportive, you do not say you can do this, you say you will do this, because will has a positive connotation. Can means, well, maybe you can and maybe you can't. So we need to stay in the positivity, and we need to stay in a mindset of openness and using words that do not shame and blame. And also your demeanor. If you have a frown on your face when you're asking for information, that can also be daunting to victim. I think they need to have facial expressions, body language that are open and encouraging, not ones that would shut them down or scare them. And there's so many things that we can do that are so very simple. We need to talk about it and take action and do the right things by victims so that they heal, because their healing journey is a lifetime. And one of the worst things that can be done is to put a time limit on it, like, well, you went to court a year ago. Why aren't you better? Again, that why shames and blames and puts a time frame. And there is no time frame on healing from the trauma that the victim feels from any kind of crime.
So it seems like there's just so much power, in our body language and the way that we talk, the things that we say.
Absolutely. So we need to convey one of trust, openness, healing, believing, and when we convey something else, we are really harming that victim further.
And you were saying earlier that people don't always, agree with your outspokenness. I know a lot of our judges, even here in our circuit courts, they like to say that, well, my ruling speaks for itself. Why do you choose to be outspoken?
Well, first of all, my ruling does speak for itself. That's what we're taught to say, and that we don't have to explain our rulings. But I go beyond that in terms of how I comport my demeanor and my courtroom. People have seen me be very kind and they've seen me be very mean. When there's contemptuous behavior, I'm going to be stern when I need to be. It also is a matter of safety. And we have deputies and law enforcement around us, but when I have a demeanor of certainty and power, it usually helps to shut down a defendant or someone who's acting out. So that's part of it. The other flip side of it is letting everybody speak. I read the Crime Victims' Rights Act very broadly so that anybody touched by crime is allowed to speak in my courtroom. I have always done that my whole career because there is no crime that just affects one person. If you assault a mother, it means that her children are affected, her parents are affected, her husband is affected. There's no boundary. And so why should I set a boundary? Now, I know judges have attacked me on that. A lot of people have attacked me on that. Okay, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it because I know it works, because I know it's the right thing to do, because I am allowed to interpret the law and I interpret it for the benefit of those people who come in front of me. There's nothing better. It's really the trifecta of law, the winning part of law, when the defendant, the victim, the Constitution, the court all comes together and unifies to look at what happened, what were the mistakes, what can we benefit from learning, those teachable moments. And when victims talk to defendants, countless times I've heard defendants say, I didn't know what I did hurt you so deeply. I'm so very sorry. When defendants say that to victims, it often helps them understand how this happened to them. There's a lot of understanding on both sides. And even if there isn't understanding, just having that public commentary helps both sides heal. And as a judge, and I think this is lost on people who don't do this, when I hear from everybody who's been touched by the crime, when I hear from defendant, even defendants' families, when I hear from victims, their families, the prosecutor, that backstory, the information you don't always get, that backstory helps me make good decisions or better decisions on what should happen in this case. And I think that's my job. So I'm not going to shirk my responsibility because I have to get home on time, because I want another cup of coffee, or because I want to go golfing. And no, I don't golf. But I know that other judges say it'll take too long. I have other cases. Well, the only important case in front of me is the case that's in front of me. Every single case is important. So I treat every case with the kind of dignity it deserves and give everyone a voice. That is the best practice for our justice system. Not everybody believes that. That's their problem. Mine is hopefully to be an example to shed light on some of the things that the legal system could do better, so that we bring more victims forward so law enforcement can do their job, and so that the truth is told. And we're only as good as the evidence brought, and giving voice to people is absolutely imperative to justice for both sides.
And we know that justice kind of looks different for different survivors, and something that you put a particular focus on in your courtroom is being able to have that healing. Do you ever have survivors come back and say, you know what, this was a particularly unique experience for me and I really needed this?
I've literally had hundreds of survivors come back and tell me that I was the first person that believed them, or that what they said in front of me, they never could say to their therapist or to their mother. And so it has helped their healing. I've also had defendants write me letters from prison saying, thank you. I didn't know what I did was that horrifying or had that effect. I'm going to do better. You told me, you're the first person that told me that I mattered and that I could do better. So these conversations are absolutely important. I also have had a number of people reach out to me who never got their day for whatever reason. The statute of limitations, the prosecutor didn't issue for lack of evidence, whatever it is, but they're still struggling and a crime happened to them. They just want to tell their story. So I have opened my court to those people, and we lock the doors. It's usually on my lunch hour, it's on my time. And I have my court reporter, and they simply give me their impact statement as if we were at sentencing. And then they will order a transcript, and they take that transcript to their therapist, and they write me letters or text me, send me a message in Instagram or whatever. And they say, I told you things that after 5 years of therapy, I never told my therapist. And this has catapulted my healing tremendously because I've been able to say it, and now we're dealing with it. So it's really the power of victims, that their own power, that helps them heal when given a platform. I think that's what we need to do.
And that's an incredibly powerful thing that you do. I've never heard of somebody doing that before. And I can imagine it's incredibly healing for people to be able to come in and, like you said, finally tell their story to someone.
Yes. Well, and the other thing I do that I don't know that anybody else does, but again, I've had so many years within the law and dealing with criminals, and I've been a defense attorney, I've been a prosecutor in the military, I've been a judge for a long time, but especially when you have a young victim who may not fully understand the ramifications of what they've gone through, or a victim who's so traumatized they cannot come to court, but maybe their mother or the prosecutor or husband or someone comes and talks for them. They don't know what happened because if they're too young, they don't really understand, but they will deal with the trauma later. And if they're so traumatized they can't come in the courtroom, they have questions their whole lives. So what I do is I ask my court reporter to prepare a transcript. I usually charge it to defendants, sometimes the county, but that transcript then is sent to the victim for use with their therapist when they're old enough, if they're young, right? So I don't have a 6-year-old read something that they can't understand, but to save it so that when they are at a time in their life in crisis, when they're in therapy, when they have a trained therapist or someone who is old enough and mature enough to explain to them, yes, you were heard, yes, this is what happened, they are given that. So they know they were heard, they were believed, and the defendant had accountability for whatever happened. And I also have found that that has worked tremendously, because then therapists are able to use that in the treatment, and transcripts are not forever. So they're getting something that 10 years from now, or 12 years, or 15, 20 years from now, when they really need it, it's not available. So I'm giving it to them and making it available to them, because court reporters only have to maintain those records for a certain number of years. And I don't want it lost when it certainly could help them recover.
Is that something in your experience you would recommend other circuit court systems in Michigan doing?
I think it ought to be mandated. Yes, because I've seen the power of that. I've also heard from therapists who said, wow, what a tremendous gift that is. So yes, if a victim can't show up, or they're so young they don't understand, or they don't remember, but they need to use that to move their life forward, I think that's part of restitution on the part of the defendant.
And you've been a part of some pretty notable cases, but is there a particular powerful moment in your career that stands out?
I've actually had a lot of powerful moments. Certainly the Nassar case was powerful because 169 people were allowed to testify. 156 of those I dubbed sister survivors, and there were only about 6 who didn't use their name. And when we started out, there were only going to be about 6 who were going to use their name. And it was powerful because there were only, I don't know, a dozen or so who were really slated to speak for sure. And once I said everybody can speak, they started thinking about it. And that was at the plea. And then the attorneys had said in chambers, we don't want everybody to speak. I said, well, appeal me. Everybody is going to speak, including the doctors who referred and, other people who were very upset about this. The magical moment, however, was when each one testified, and they came up very uncertain and shy, and they said to him, I am not a number, I am a name. And then they told him exactly what they thought of him, exactly how they were hurt. And what that did not only empowered themselves, but you could literally see the other victims saying, that's right. And they stood up, much to their own surprise, much to their family's surprise. People did not know that they were going to testify. It was those powerful words from every survivor that allowed another survivor and another survivor to testify. And it was just something that if you could see electricity, I saw it. And it's just a magical moment of empowerment. It's nothing that I did. It's what they did. It was their strength that came forward that allowed the next one and the next one to testify. And therapists would call me at night saying, I know you can't talk about the case, but can we help you? Are you troubled? I said, no, I don't need any help. And the reason is because I saw them all being reborn. It was like being handed a new baby. So you go through childbirth and it's painful. As soon as you hold that baby in your arms, you forget the pain. That's exactly what happened in my courtroom. I saw them being reborn and I didn't feel the pain. I felt them healing. And I've had that happen in multiple cases. And I could go on for hours telling you various victims who've testified. I had a young girl who was raped by her father. And she said to me, I still love him. I don't understand what happened. But she said the worst of it is I had to give up my baby because he looks just like my dad. And she was a minor. And when I spoke to her and she told me her story, and she said that in front of her dad, she literally grew a couple of feet. And I'm sure that her mother and other relatives had told her how special she was and how strong. But when I said it, I wished I could have said it to her every single day because, again, it was the magic of the robe. She really brightened up and she smiled and she just sort of let go of the weight she'd been carrying. So I think it's that important. It should happen in every case. I've always done it. I have countless cases where I've watched that victorious voice of the victim turn them into survivor and thriver, knowing that they were not going to self-harm, knowing that they were not going to induce drugs or alcohol or check out in other ways that people do, knowing that they knew they were valuable and they were going to continue with their head held high and that they didn't carry any of the blame. So, yeah, countless cases. I could spend hours, days telling you.
So you are a mom, you have a family, you're also a judge. So life is very busy, I imagine. Why make the time to come up, to places like Traverse City and have these conversations and do events like this?
Because we are only as strong for change as we partner together. When we share the awareness, the information, when we have these conversations, when we allow people to tell their stories and what did or didn't happen, how they were treated or should have been treated, all those things that we discuss, it allows teachable moments. It is impactful for people to come forward, to know that there are people who care, because there's been silence for so long that people feel like they can't come forward. They don't trust law enforcement. They don't trust their mother. They don't trust their teachers. And we need these moments to say, yes, you can tell law enforcement, you can tell a judge, you can tell a trusted adult, and there is help out there. There is no shame. You don't have anything to fear. You are fearless when you tell your story. It doesn't mean you're without any fear, but you really have not let that fear of silence stand in your way. And when we get those messages out, we empower people to tell their stories, to not be victims, and to live full, whole lives, and hopefully to make predators aware that we're coming, that we're standing as one, that we're united and we're coming after them. That silence is no more, that victims are safe, and that they will be found.
What can, and not just like, ordinary people like myself, but, the court systems as well, what can we be doing better?
There is nothing to be gained by silence. If you think there's a problem, speak out, because there's no harm to you that's going to come by thinking that there's a situation. And it's okay to be wrong, but if you're right, you save a life. So we have a lot of human trafficking in this community and around our state and around the United States, actually around the world. Learn the signs, know them. If you're at an airport and you think someone doesn't fit with someone, call it out, save a life. If someone seems disoriented, get law enforcement or some other trusted adult to help them, because who knows what they're suffering from. It's the silence that is killing us. It's the silence that allows crime to continue. There is no cost in speaking out. And you save lives by saying, this isn't right, or I think this person needs help. And countless times I have done just that. I don't worry about the consequence to me. I just worry about getting whoever I see in trouble help. And I think that the message should be that law enforcement, they're peacekeeping officers. They are there for help. They don't just punish. I don't just punish as a judge. We're all in this to partner together for the safety of our community, for the safety of every human being. And we're only as safe as partnering together. So speak out. Learn the signs of domestic violence. Learn the signs of grooming, gaslighting, sexual assault, human trafficking, and speak out if what you think gnaws at your gut. That is a warning sign that, hey, danger's there, speak out.